Beneath centuries of mud, silence, and seasonal floods, archaeologists have uncovered the remains of a vast Byzantine church complex covering nearly 1.5 dunums. At first glance, it appears to be another impressive sacred ruin from late antiquity. But buried within its mosaic floor lies something far more unsettling, an inscription in ancient Greek, only a few lines long, yet powerful enough to reignite one of the most contested debates in Christian history. This discovery did not emerge from Rome or from later medieval theology, but from Galilee itself, where the gospel story began. Some scholars are already calling it the most important biblical archaeological discovery since the moon landing, not because of its size, but because of what it claims. Hidden near the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, archaeologists have uncovered a 1,500-year-old Byzantine church that may have been deliberately built over the very hometown of Peter, Andrew, and Philip. Inside, preserved with astonishing clarity, is a mosaic inscription that refers to Peter not merely as an apostle, but as the chief of the apostles and the holder of the keys to the kingdom of heaven. The language is bold, deliberate, and unmistakably theological. This is not decorative piety. It is a declaration of belief, frozen in stone, laid into the floor of a church by early Christians who were far closer in time and place to the apostles than we are today. It forces a question that many assumed was settled long ago. What did the earliest Christians actually believe about Peter? Every so often, archaeology does more than inform us. It confronts us. This is one of those moments. For more than a century, scholars have debated the location of Bethsaida, a town repeatedly mentioned in the New Testament and identified as the hometown of Peter, Andrew, and Philip. The Gospel of John states it plainly. Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter, John 1:44. Yet, despite its importance, Bethsaida vanished from the historical record. Pilgrims searched for it. Scholars argued over it. Maps were redrawn again and again, but no consensus emerged. The town seemed to dissolve into legend. That uncertainty may now be ending. On the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, archaeologists, led by Professor Mordecai Avium and Dr. Stephen Notley, uncovered the ruins of a Byzantine-era church buried beneath more than a millennium of accumulated earth. What they found inside was not merely architectural. It was theological. At the center of the mosaic floor lay an inscription that explicitly names Peter as chief of the apostles and bearer of the keys of the heavenly kingdom. Freezing mirrors Matthew 16:19, where Jesus tells Peter, "I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." The preservation of the mosaic is almost unnerving. After 14 centuries underground, the lettering remains crisp, the lines sharp, the message intact, as if it had been sealed intentionally for a future generation. Scholars who have examined it describe a mixture of astonishment and caution. Dr. Craig Evans, a leading expert on the historical Jesus, has called it the clearest archaeological link ever found to Peter's hometown. Dr. Notley, co-director of the excavation, emphasized that the importance lies not in a single artifact, but in how everything now aligns: the location, the church, the inscriptions, and the ancient text. To grasp the weight of this discovery, one must understand why Bethsaida has long been one of the great mysteries of biblical archaeology. Once a thriving fishing village, its name meaning House of the Fishermen in Aramaic, it was the setting of several gospel events. According to the New Testament, Bethsaida was near where Jesus healed a blind man, Mark 8:22, where thousands were fed with loaves and fishes, Luke 9:10-17, and near where Jesus walked on water. Yet it was also one of the few towns Jesus explicitly condemned. Woe to you, Bethsaida, for if the miracles done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago. After this warning, Bethsaida fades from the biblical narrative and soon after disappears from history. For centuries, pilgrims searched for it, guided only by fragments of tradition. In the 19th century, scholars proposed at Tal, a site nearly 2 kilometers inland, as the best candidate. But the location posed problems. It was too far from the water for a fishing village and lacked clear first-century Roman remains. The theory never fully convinced. The turning point came after the 1967 Six-Day War, when renewed archaeological access led Israeli surveys to focus on a low-lying site much closer to the Sea of Galilee known as El Araj. Pottery, glass, and mosaic. Fragments suggested long-term occupation, but proof remained elusive. Momentum increased in the early 2000s. In a symbolic moment, Pope John Paul II was flown over the region and presented with a replica of a bronze key discovered at the site, an unmistakable reference to Peter in Matthew 16. In 2016, a full-scale excavation began at El Araj with backing from institutions including the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Almost immediately, the team uncovered Roman-era coins, tools, and structures dating to the 1st century. By 2018, they had exposed the foundations of a Byzantine basilica, a bathhouse, and what appeared to be a pilgrim hostel, exactly the kind of complex expected at a major Christian memory site. Then came the inscriptions. One, preserved nearly intact, contains a prayer for a man named Constantine, likely a local patron, and explicitly names Peter as chief of the apostles and holder of the keys of the heavenly spheres. The wording aligns strikingly with the 8th century travel account of Willibald, a Bavarian bishop who wrote of staying overnight in a church at Bethsaida dedicated to Peter and Andrew. For generations, Willibald's account was dismissed as devotional exaggeration. Now with the church, its layout, and its dedication matching his description, his testimony reads less like legend and more like eyewitness memory. Beneath layers of Galilean soil lay not just a building, but a timeline. Roman layers beneath Byzantine foundations reveal continuity rather than invention. The church complex included facilities for pilgrims, suggesting the site was visited, remembered, and venerated for centuries. 3 Greek inscriptions were embedded in the mosaic floor. 2 were fragmentary. The 3rd, pristine, carries enormous theological weight. It reads in essence that the mosaic was laid by Constantine, servant of Christ, in honor of Peter, chief of the apostles and holder of the keys, asking Peter to intercede for him and his children. This is precise liturgical language, not casual praise. What makes this extraordinary is not simply what it says, but where and when it says it. The inscription is in Greek, not Latin. It did not originate in Rome. It predates the East-West schism and later medieval papal claims. It reflects the belief of Byzantine Christians and the Eastern Mediterranean Christians who share cultural, linguistic, and geographic proximity to the earliest followers of Jesus. It shows that Peter's primacy was not a later Roman innovation, but part of the shared memory of the undivided early church. Early Christians did not build churches randomly. They built them over places they remembered. The Church of the Nativity stands over Bethlehem. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre marks the crucifixion and resurrection. The Church of the Annunciation commemorates Nazareth. The church at El Araj fits this same pattern. The builders lacked modern archaeology, but they possessed living memory and oral tradition. They knew where to build because the memory had not yet faded. The theological implications are unavoidable. Critics have long argued that Peter's authority was no different from that of the other apostles, citing passages where authority is shared. Yet only Peter is given the keys. In the ancient world, keys symbolized delegated royal authority, a concept rooted in Isaiah 22:22. The inscription at El Araj demonstrates that early Christians understood Matthew 16 in exactly this way. It does not prove the modern papacy, nor does it force any single doctrinal conclusion, but it firmly anchors the Catholic interpretation of Peter's role in early widespread belief. This discovery does not end debates, but it changes their terms. It shows that long before medieval councils, long before theological polemics, Christians in Galilee remembered Peter as the chief of the apostles and the holder of the keys. Written in stone where Peter himself once lived, this belief was preserved through centuries of silence until the earth finally gave it back. What began as a routine excavation has become a moment where archaeology, scripture, and tradition converge. History and faith have collided, and the dust is still settling. The question now is not whether this memory existed, but what we will do with it.